this is really one of the things I enjoy the most, because I look at the user groups as Apple's lifeline out to the people who are experiencing our products. And if you think about what Apple's vision is, which is to do nothing less than change the world, to do that one person at a time, and to accomplish that by fundamentally changing the way people work and think and communicate and learn, nothing is more important than the using experience. And it's the using experience that we have decided is the epicenter of everything that Apple wants to be respected for. So this really, I think, gives you some context to look at why user groups as a network are so terribly important. It's very difficult as our products become more complex, as we get a wider range of products in our line, to be able to get all of the information out to the end users who are going to be using these products, so that they can really enjoy the very best of what our products have to offer, unless there are some support lines that go out there. Now, some of those support lines Apple can provide. Others can be provided by third-party groups like our resellers. But I think that there's nothing like having a relationship, because this really is an industry of relationships, having a relationship with people who are actually enjoying what they're doing with the products, not just trying to sell the products, but are actually enjoying using the products along with you. And that, I believe, is one of the reasons why Apple is as successful as it is because what all of you have done. So I think it's very appropriate to thank the Advisory Council, and then to ask you to take those thanks out to all of the groups that you represent, because I want everyone who is involved with an Apple user group to know that I consider what you do very important. I want to personally extend my thanks, and to say that the success of Apple in the future is going to be as dependent on what you will do as what you've already done so far. Let me give you sort of a perspective of what I think is going on in the personal computer industry, and particularly as it relates to Apple. First of all, the personal computer industry has been and will continue to go through tremendous change. There's not going to be any slowdown in the technology that we can foresee in the future. The number of new ways that the technology can be used is only going to increase, I believe. So it means for the user who is out there trying to make decisions as to what products they should buy, whether it's peripheral products or upgrading their CPUs or software products, or trying to figure out how they're going to fit in with other computers from other vendors, the questions are only going to be more difficult to answer. And it means that we have to have a way of getting that information out. When Apple was founded back in 1977, the dealer network was created. And the dealer network was made up largely of people who knew something about computers, and they were selling to people who knew something about computers. Today, we know that the large majority of our products are going to people who are interested in what the computers can do for them, but they may not be computer experts, and they may not even have any particular interest to become computer experts. And yet the products are becoming more sophisticated, and they're going through this rapid change. I hope to see some new networks that will be created over the next several years. For example, I would love to see a network of consultants emerge in the industry, people who can charge a fee for service, that can go out and work with users. Some may be corporate users, some may be educational users, some may be individual users. But the point is to have an infrastructure out there where entrepreneurs, many of whom will probably come out of user clubs, will decide that they want to make Apple more than just something that they do in their free time. They'd like to make Apple something that they could do as a vocation. And we're trying to build a company which is relatively small, which is dependent upon third-party relationships. So I would love to see a network of consultants emerge where Apple could help train these consultants, help provide materials so they would be informed about our products, but then they could go out and define what areas that they wanted to specialize in, and you might end up with several thousand of consultants across the United States. And since this is a global industry, I would love to see this, go right across Canada and Europe and other parts of the world. I also would love to see a network of training experts emerge, people who can go out and train. So they may, in some cases, be similar to consultants. In other cases, they may be slightly different. For example, the consultants might actually work with things like integrating systems together, and how do you link together several Macintoshes, or how do you connect Apple IIGSs with Macintoshes in a mixed environment, or how do you put on peripheral products, or how do you connect up to IBM compatible computers with Apple computers, or things of this nature. Or they might work in trying to help a customer or a client learn how to use a particular application, whereas a training person would actually go in and do the training work, and they wouldn't be installing equipment, but they would be teaching people how to use products that were coming from Apple, or products that were coming from third parties, and showing them how to use things, recognizing that the people they might be training might not know very much about computers to start with. So it could be some fairly basic level type stuff. But one of the big problems you have where I sit is getting isolated and not being in touch with everything that's going on. So on the one hand, I can talk to you about the macro vision, but you can talk to me about what's actually happening, what's happening with the experiences of the people who are seeing Apple from the standpoint of the products and services which they receive. And there is nothing more valuable for me than to get that input firsthand. And I want to thank you for the time that you invest, because I know you take a lot of time out of your personal lives. It costs you money to do this, and it means a lot to the success of Apple, and it means a lot to the success of John Sculley. So thank you. Why don't we open it up now for some questions that you have?
I speak from the background of both an Apple II and a Macintosh user group, and we discuss this among the people that are familiar with both Apple II and Macintosh. And what we've seen is when the Lisa and the Macintosh came out in 83, 84, we saw a lot of the technical people that were working on Apple II, the developers, the real knowledgeable people, immediately migrate over to the Macintosh. Well, then over the 5-year period since the Mac has come out, we're starting to see more and more of the intermediate level people move from the Apple II. The ones that have been supporting the new users and whatnot are moving now to the Macintosh. And what we have seen from Apple is a continued commitment, or said in marketing that they're committed to the Apple II line. But our question is, how can you continue to support for this line when your grassroots support is leaving for the Macintosh, as well as even the dealers are moving toward the Macintosh? It seems like it's getting to the point where people really question whether to go with the Apple II, because the support is all moving toward the Macintosh.
Well, I think that's a very good question, and it's one which we think about a lot. I think it would be a mistake to consciously hold down the growth of any product just because you thought that there was a policy reason why you ought to do it. So that my feeling is that we have to let the Macintosh grow as fast as it's capable of growing, and we have to let the Apple II grow as fast as it is capable of growing. What we have seen, particularly over the last year, Andy, is that there are a lot of very loyal enthusiasts out there who don't want to see the Apple II go away. We had about 10,000 people at Apple Fest in Boston last spring, a year ago. We had about twice that number in San Francisco at Apple Fest, and this is an Apple II event. And I talked to a large number of them, and the one clear message that they gave me is, don't abandon the Apple II. That we know the Macintosh has more advanced technology in many ways, but there are a lot of us out there who really like what the Apple II does, and we want to continue to have support. The difficult task is that we have to find ways that third parties can continue to support the Apple II and make money in the process. And the introduction of the Apple II GSOS operating system, I think, is going to help a lot, because that's an operating system that in many ways has a lot of the characteristics of the Macintosh operating system. So it's got very sophisticated stereo sound, it's got very high quality graphics, it's got color, and yet it's got the compatibility with the Apple II software base that we've had in the past. So my sense is that that's going to be important. Moving the Apple II over to 3.5-inch media was a very controversial decision. A lot of people were worried about what that would do, because there was so much media on the Apple II on the 5.25-inch format. And yet we felt we had to proactively begin the transition, because we knew that we weren't going to get developers to want to write more sophisticated applications, unless we gave them a chance to write on something that had a larger disk capacity to it. So I think these kinds of decisions have been important ones, occasionally somewhat controversial. And I think I'd sort of like to hear maybe from the Advisory Council what ideas all of you have that we can do to keep the Apple II going, recognizing that the real momentum in the industry is towards 32-bit processors, and we're seeing the Macintosh have extraordinary growth, and in many cases starting to move into some of the market segments where the Apple II had once been very successful. Keep in mind that the Apple II was a general-purpose computer 4 or 5 years ago, so by definition it was going to bump up against Macintosh or IBM PCs or other computers at some point in time. Well, I'd much rather have somebody who wasn't going to buy an Apple II buy a Macintosh than go buy an IBM PC compatible. So that's sort of the perspective we've used on it. But I'd really like some input from the Advisory Council on what you all think.
We're wondering what Apple is coming out with the new technology, what's happening there. What can we tell people who are not really interested, they don't have the support or the allegiance to the computer or the company that we had originally. They would just want to get the job done. How can we respond to them? What is Apple doing to address those issues?
Well, I think the best way to respond to those people is to remind them that after they have purchased any computer system, that they don't get their return on investment, and the return on investment may be in the form of increased productivity if they're a business person, small or large business, or it may be the return on enjoyment that they get from the individual user purchasing it. But you don't get any of that unless the using experience is really great. And I believe that we have not done a good enough job at Apple in telling the story that it's not just technical features that make a computer successful. It's the fact that you have to sit down and get behind it and drive it. And perhaps the best way to explain that to somebody is to walk into an Apple user group meeting and set up a competitive machine. Set up the most advanced competitive machine. Take an IBM PC compatible with a 386 processor, put a lot of memory on it, put Windows on it, put a VGA card on it, put whatever you think is appropriate on it, and then sit somebody down and let them boot the system and drive it, for 45 minutes, and then take a Macintosh, any Macintosh, not just the highest end Macintosh that we have, but any Macintosh, Macintosh Plus or Macintosh SE or SE30 or the Apple the Macintosh 2, and let them drive that for 45 minutes. And I think the point there is that there has to be a reason why, when we've gone out and done surveys, we find that the average IBM compatible user uses their computer about half an hour a day and uses less than 2 applications in total, in terms of their total knowledge, and why the average Macintosh user is up to almost 6 applications now, and they are able to spend about 2.5 to 3 hours a day on their Macintosh. Why are they doing that? So I believe that that's probably the best context to answer the question. Then, in terms of judging what Apple is doing from a technical standpoint, judge it from the vantage point of the user's experience. What we're trying to do is, as the world gets more complex with computer technology, we're trying to keep things simpler. And we can do that because we focus on a lot of things which are in our control. So we can leverage our strengths. We can spend time in seeing how the pieces integrate well with each other. Our competitors, by necessity, can go out and say, all right, we will copy the features that Apple has, and maybe we'll add a few that Apple doesn't have. But they essentially have to bolt together things that come from a variety of different sources. And by definition, they're going to have to average to the lowest common denominator, because they've got to be able to reach out to the broadest number of vendor products that follow their particular technology. That is only going to become a bigger advantage, I believe, for Apple over time, as things become more complex. And so a lot of our technology is invested in things that aren't particularly flashy or particularly glamorous, but they mean a lot, I think, for the user when they're sitting down and using their computer. Now, from a technology standpoint, the kinds of things which we're focusing on are to take the Macintosh product line and to essentially move as many people as we can to the 68030 processor family. It's not the software that you have today won't run on the 68000 or the 68020. So this is not a heart transplant conversion that the DOS world had to go through by any stretch of the imagination. But we're trying to anticipate the more powerful system software that we'll have at the operating system level in the future, that you will not be able to experience the full capabilities of it unless you have the memory management unit, which is built into the 68030 processor. So yes, you will have compatibility. So you haven't lost your investment if you buy something less than a 68030 platform machine. But if you want to experience all the things we're going to do in the future, you're going to want to have that. We're trying to build out the range of the Macintosh family because we are now reaching a much broader group of market segments than we ever did in the past. When we entered business just a few years ago, we came in through the back door into essentially desktop publishing applications. Once we got in, people discovered that the Macintosh could be used for a lot more things. So now one of our fastest growing markets is engineering and technical workstation applications. We're moving into legal markets, medical markets. We're moving into just a group of market segments that have required that we have hardware platforms that are that really give the end user a freedom of choice to decide what configuration makes the most sense to them. So that isn't always glamorous, but it's important from the user standpoint. The third thing I would say is that there isn't anything that we have seen that's been introduced by any competitor that we believe is going to put Apple with the Macintosh technology at a disadvantage in the early 1990s. We're essentially trying to get ready for the early 1990s because we believe that the best years for the Macintosh technology are going to be in the 1990s. And it means the right hardware platforms, it means the right system software, it means the right development tools like end-user programming tools. It means encouraging application developers to take advantage of these platforms, such as the multimedia technology that I showed at my Macworld keynote recently. All of these things we think are going to be extremely important in the early 1990s. So what we're doing may not seem glamorous, that we don't come out and announce a brand new computer and therefore obsolete the computers we had before. We used to do that and people got mad at us. Now they're getting mad at us because we don't do it. So my sense is that you have to sort of strike a balance, and we're trying to strike a balance that will only make the Macintosh worth more in the future. But I can assure, I think, every user across the world that they are not going to be at a disadvantage versus what competitors will be offering as we go out into the 1990s. In the winter of 1989, we will introduce a new Macintosh. And this will be one that will be essentially building off of the great success that we've had with the Macintosh 2. So this will have a 68030 processor. It will have a new bus architecture to it, but it will be a compact Macintosh in terms of a small footprint. And this means that you will trade off 3 slots, for size, but you'll pick up, performance because it has the 68030 processor in it. Now, this Macintosh, I think, is going to be extremely successful because it's the most versatile one that we've ever introduced, meaning that it can be configured in more ways than any other Macintosh we've ever offered. As an example, it not only has a small footprint, but it's introduced with a full-page display, which can sit on top of that CPU, which means that it's not much bigger than we've become accustomed with the compact line of SE and Mac Pluses. The CPU can be turned on its side, and it can sit next to a large 21-inch monitor. You can drive a color monitor, as well as a black and white monitor. You can take all of the cards that the Apple II or the Macintosh 2 or the Macintosh 2X have. And it's a product which can do something that I think is going to be very important to a graphic artist, to power users who have to work with spreadsheets a lot, to engineers who have to do CAD drawings, let's say, on the one hand, but also have to turn those into reports or proposals. And that is the support of 2 displays at the same time. Now, one of the subtleties of the way that the Macintosh has been architected is that we can support more than a single monitor at the same time. So I think this particular product, which is going to be called the Macintosh 2CX, is that some of the most powerful uses of this computer are going to be used with 2 displays, so that someone will have a full-page display on one side, and they'll have the CPU in the center, and then next to it they'll have maybe a color monitor, or they might have a 21-inch display, so that if you were working with a spreadsheet, you'd have a large spreadsheet model on your large display, and then you'd be able to cut and paste into a report and see the full report. If you were working as a graphic artist, it might be just the reverse. You might have some of your tools over on the smaller display, and you might be compositing on the large display. If you're an engineer, you might be using your CAD tools or other engineering applications on the large display and preparing your report on the smaller display. If you are a clerical worker, a secretary, or if you're a manager in an organization, large or small, forms, I think, are going to become increasingly important. So having a small footprint product with a full-page display with one monitor, so you can see the entire form, I think is going to be very important. So, is that innovation in a revolutionary sense, or is that innovation in an evolutionary sense? Well, it's going to be revolutionary from the standpoint of the way that you use the product. But it's going to be evolutionary from the standpoint that it's the same architecture, it's building off of the strengths that we've had before, it's learning the lessons of the power of the Mac 2, but it's learning the lessons of the compactness of the SE. So I think that we have to strike this balance between, where do you revolutionize and where do you evolutionize? And this is a very good example of a product that I think is going to capture the imagination of a lot of people and say, wow, this is exciting. And people will call it revolutionary, but in truth, it's really very evolutionary. I would like to see ways that there were even better relationships between user groups and Apple people. Ellen Leonce and her team, in my opinion, have done an absolutely extraordinary job of building the bridges with the user groups and expanding user groups into areas that we never had user groups before. But that's a relatively small number of people. I would love to see more contact with our field people with user groups, field people attending user group meetings. In the past, there's often been an adversarial relationship between resellers and user groups. This makes no sense to me at all. I mean, if I were a reseller, I would be out wrapping my arms around all of you because you would help me, I think. So I think we've got to find ways to get our resellers to understand that user groups are a wonderful resource, and resellers ought to be helping them, not trying to, be aloof. So I think there's some things we can do, and we'll try to work hard at that over the coming year.
It's different than watching television because you're making the television.
It allows students to bring in a whole new world of information to their Apple II computer.
At home, it offers people a lot of increased opportunities for creativity and imagination.
It's really neat when you can put yourself into your drawing.
Introducing the Apple II Video Overlay Card from Apple Computer. It lets you take the words and pictures you create on your Apple II and combine them with video. You can take video from your video camera, VCR, video disc, or television, feed it into your Apple IIgs or IIe, superimpose graphics, text, or animation from any Apple II software program, and display your creations on a TV or record them on a VCR. You've probably seen video overlay before, on TV sports programs and on the news. With the Apple II Video Overlay Card, you can create your own overlays, and the only limit is your imagination.
It's like when you read a book when you were a kid, and there were pictures in it, and you're like, wow, I wish I could be in the book. And now you really can on the computer screen.
Once you put this technology in the hands of these students, it frees them to do all sorts of things and come up with all sorts of ideas. This is a natural extension of what the Apples are all about.
Last year, for language arts, I wrote a book called The Ghost of the Great Dane, and we printed it on the Apple. We're trying to illustrate it now. It's about this group of cats called the Main Street Cats.
We took a video of Heather reading her story. She's going to be in the bakery door.
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Smokey, the leader of the gang. This is Tiger, my cousin, Pumpkin, my best friend, and Princess, a white cat with black spots. She's sort of my girlfriend. And these are the Siamese twins. Not real Siamese twins, silly, twin Siamese cats.
Oh, neato, because now the web... It's really interesting and fun to combine pictures that I had made myself with television images. When you put them together, you can do so many things. You just put reality with fantasy, and it's really neat.
As a teacher, it opens up things tremendously. Kids who wouldn't respond to any other sort of stimulation now will respond to the video, respond to the computers, and use them in a far more creative way.
Instead of turning in papers, you might be able to turn in videotapes.
What excites me about using the Apple II Video Overlay Card and the Video Mix software is that it allows us to marry the density of information on video disc and videotape to the intelligence of the computer. And to have those two things together in one package is unbeatable.
One of the things that interested me with the Video Overlay Card is that as we do our own videos, we can now begin to become more creative. A number of years ago, it was a big thing if you sent somebody a taped letter. Now, with this kind of an option available through the Video Overlay Card, you can send them videotapes and include things like recipes and greetings and catch people up and do all kinds of fascinating overlays and special effects that were unavailable before. I'm going to show you how to make it. I could see the opportunity for us to catalog what's in the house, overlay it, and keep a record of it for insurance purposes. Our two children that are working with computers a lot. One has a hobby of swimming and the other has a hobby of horseback riding.
Well, my favorite thing in the world to do is to ride horses. I've been riding them for 6 years. The reason that I did this piece is to study the different movements of the horse. All that I did was put dots on all of his main ligaments and then just connected the dots to see how he moves. It didn't take me very long to do because the video card and the video makes it very easy to be able to look at the video on the computer. I was really amazed by what I saw because I didn't know what was going on until I really looked at it as the whole piece of animation. It's actually very interesting.
I'm impressed with the ability now to integrate in one piece of machinery through the computer lots of different things that we have out there. For those families that have a video camera and a VCR, that this offers a whole new range of creativity and imagination to the family.
The Apple II Video Overlay Card makes your Apple II computer more powerful than ever before. At home and at school, the world of personal computing has come together with the world of video, and now there's a whole new world to explore.
Well, I met my first Macintosh at a computer store about 1 week after the introduction of the machine. And I walked up to it, the salesman said, "Go ahead, play," and I played for just a very short time, and I just said to myself, this is it. This is the way it's supposed to be, the way computers should work.
All the way As you remember, we have three families of Macintoshes: the compact one, such as the SC or the SC30 or the Plus, and the modular one, such as the Mac 2 and the Mac 2X. So today we are announcing the Mac 2 CX. And what I like to do first is give you an inside guided tour of the Macintosh 2 CX. What you have here is the bottom case. The plastic is metallized to eliminate radio frequency interference. This is the logic board that goes into the case. You'll see 3 new bus slots as opposed to 6 on the Mac 2 and the Mac 2 CX. And you have the Motorola 68030 processor, the floating point coprocessor. This is the ROM. There's a SIM slot for future ROM upgrades. These are the 8 SIM slots for DRAM. We have, as you know, we have lots of DRAM, so you know, buy DRAM while supplies last. So I'll put that in the bottom case. Then comes the storage. Excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. Then comes the speaker. The speaker much larger than the speaker you had on the ASC or the 2, which provide better sound quality, better volume. Is placed towards the user, and it drops into the computer here, and is connected with this cable. There's a stereo sound jack in the back. Then the storage subsystem with the floppy at the bottom and the hard disk at the top. We supply the hard disk in 2 flavors, 40 and 80 megabytes. Nervous, you know, everything they said, everything worked at the rehearsal, you know. So we have the power connector in. We have 1 cable for the floppy drive, which obviously I have some trouble putting in. Don't try this at home. As they say. As the Volkswagen adds. So now we have the storage subsystem. This is the power module with the air motion device, which we made even quieter. Ventilation is from front to back to keep the noise out in the back, and the power supply module drops in place. This is the Nubus video 8-bit video card that drops in here. And we have a fully assembled Macintosh 2 CX here. And we'll see if it works. So maybe I can get a monitor. I'll plug the keyboard and mouse. Thank you. Sound. This is one of the video cables. And the last cable, I hope. And we'll see if it works. Well, we have liftoff, I think. Yes, yes. So this is our newest Macintosh, the Macintosh 2CX. And I'd like to say a few words before taking it through its paces so that it introduces itself in more detail. I'd like to say a few words about the design goals we had. One was to obviously listen to feedback from our customers who cared for a computer that would be even quieter than the Macintosh 2. That would take a less desktop space and could be used in various positions. You saw a lot of Macintosh 2s being used on their side. Well, this computer is designed to be used on its side. You can have rubber feet on the side. You put it, on the right or the left of the computer, or you can even put it under the counter. We wanted to incorporate what we thought was the best of design for manufacturing, which I hope I established by showing how easy it is to assemble and repair the computer. We wanted speed and more speed. We wanted compatibility with the past of system software and application software, as well as a platform that was ready for the future of the system software evolution. So this is, in my opinion, the nicest computer we've done so far. It speaks well for the dedication and the talent of the engineers and the manufacturer who work together to make the physical design as elegant as the system software design. And now I'd like to explain a few of its features. First, we designed it, as I said, for flexibility. We changed the entire physical design so that, for instance, it could be placed on the side or under the counter, but also that airflow came from the front into the back. That will eliminate noise, would provide the ability to use the computer in various positions with a monitor on top of it, for instance, that would not obstruct the airflow. So flexibility was an important design point in this computer. We are trying to make it as easy to live with as we know how to. The loudspeaker is another element. Our customers like the sound, the stereo sound in the Macintosh 2. It's 44.1 kilohertz, the same rate as a CD sampling frequency. And by the way, all the animations that you have seen and you will see today and the sound are produced on a Macintosh and executed by a Macintosh. Then at the heart of the Macintosh 2CX is the 68030 Motorola processor, which is the high end of the Motorola family. In the Macintosh 2CX you have a 16 megahertz full 32-bit processor that provides about 4 times the throughput of a 68000 that you find in a Macintosh SE, for instance, in part because of the clock frequency, moving from 8 to 16 megahertz, but also because of the wider data path, as well as the on-chip data and instruction cache. Then we have the 6882 floating point core processor. That core processor is fully compatible with the 881 that we have on the Mac 2 and provides about 400 times the speed that you can observe on a Macintosh SE. And we'll get back to that with some proof of that later today. Then we have NuBus. We have 3 NuBus slots instead of 6. which is why we managed to make the footprint substantially smaller than with the Macintosh 2 and the Macintosh 2CX. Let's remind ourselves that this is a 32-bit bus, very high speed, that provides the ability to have multiple masters on the bus, meaning you can have very intelligent cards designed independently of the main processor that can offload the machine of complex tasks for graphics maybe someday, and definitely for communications in the near future. Memory, there are 8 SIM slots on the motherboard. Depending on whether you use 256K or 1 megabit chip, you can have memory coming in 1, 2, 4, 5, or 8 megabyte of capacity on the motherboard. And this motherboard is ready for 4 megabit parts, so the capacity will be quadrupled when the 4 megabit parts will become available, for which this computer has been designed. The disk drive, the floppy drive, is the new super drive from Apple Computer, 1.4 megabyte of capacity, compatible with the 400 and 800K formats that we used previously on the earlier Macintosh. It also provides data file compatibility with other environments, such as Apple's Apple II products environment, but also MS-DOS and OS/2 environment, thus making our customers' lives even easier in a multi-vendor environment, so they can move data around without difficulty. So this is the Macintosh 2CX. This is the latest member of the modular family as opposed to the compact. Now we have some more exciting products, and to introduce them and talk about our overall company strategy, I'd like to bring to the stage the product manager in the sky, the chairman of the boards, John Sculley.
Thank you very much. I had the opportunity just before the Christmas holidays to build a Macintosh 2CX over at our Fremont factory as Jean-Louis assembled it here today. And it really brought home for me how true the statement is that our products really show the philosophy of our company. This is Apple Computer at its best. Best in design, best in terms of what we are trying to do with personal computing. And in many ways, this will shape the destiny of Apple and personal computing as we head out into the 1990s. So what the Apple IIe was for us in the early 1980s and what it helped us to become in this decade, I believe that the Apple IIcx is going to serve a similar role in the late 80s and as we head out into the 1990s. This may be one small box, one CPU, but it represents many different computers. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about for a few minutes now. 2 years ago, we introduced the Macintosh SE, and this has become the most popular Macintosh computer that we've ever brought to the marketplace. But even amongst its greatest enthusiasts, there has always been a great desire to have a larger screen, to have expandability, and to have a product that could support color. With the entry-level 2CX, with the Mac 2 12-inch 640 by 480 black and white screen, we have a product which addresses many of those issues, and it gives us the new bus expandability. But I think the product that I personally am most excited about is the one I'd like to introduce to you right now. And this is the 2CX with a portrait display. I've had the opportunity for the past 2 months to have a 2CX with a portrait display at my ranch, and I use it all the time. And if you are a Mac fanatic, as I am, you will really want to get your hands on this particular machine, because we all remember the Japanese woman woodcut that was first shown when the Macintosh 128K was introduced. But we've never seen all of the picture, and I'd like to show you the rest of the picture. Some of you may have seen me walking around Macworld Expo in January, and I had this little photographer's loop. It's a magnifying glass, and I was going up to different monitors and looking at the corners. And I saw some people saying, "What's he doing?" Well, what I was doing was looking at the resolution, because for a full-page portrait display like this, with wide deflection, it's very difficult to get sharp focus in the corners without having bowing in the center of the screen. And what our engineers have accomplished here is a no-compromise display. It has the same resolution that we're used to with the Macintosh 9-inch screen, a higher DPI. That's 72 dots per inch. This is actually 80 dots per inch. Supports 4 levels of grayscale. In fact, it can support all the way up to 16 levels of grayscale with the 8-bit card. And this is a product which I first realized the importance of high resolution when I was writing my book a few years ago. I started out with a third-party display because I wanted something larger, but then I had to move back to the 9-inch screen on my SE, because sitting in front of the computer hour after hour was very difficult with flicker and soft focus. There is no problem sitting in front of this machine hour after hour, because I've done it now for several months. I'd like to give you an example of just what graphics look like. One of the big opportunities, I think, for the full-page display is to open up new uses for the Macintosh. Claris has come out with a product called Smart Forms. Here's a Smart Form for the 1040EZ, which some of us will be filling out pretty soon for our income tax here in the United States. It lets you see not part of what you get, which is what WYSIWYG has been for many of us, but it lets you see all of what you get when you print it out on an 8.5 by 11-inch page, or an A4 in Europe on a LaserWriter printer. And that it becomes obvious of the significance when you look at forms. Here's a look at what some graphics look like. This happens to be Adobe's Illustrator. And here's another one, which is PageMaker. And I might say one of the uses that I found particularly helpful to me is that I use a number of different electronic mail systems, and one of them is MacNet from Connect. This is a very good user interface on MacNet, and ideal for a full-page display, because what happens is when you receive a message, the message that you want to respond to sits at the top of the screen, and then you get a blank message sheet below that, already self-addressed or addressed to the person you're responding to, with the same people copied on it, and you can refer back to the one you're answering while you're creating the new one. You don't have to click back and forth between windows as you do with some other electronic mail system. So it has some tremendous intuitive advantages to it besides just being high resolution. I'd like to give you even a further example of what you can do with configuring different computers, again, from the same CPU box that Jean-Louis assembled just a few moments ago. And this is our 2-page display. We can bring that out. Now, the 2-page display is something we've been working on for several years. Same high resolution that I described to you with the portrait display, only you can see 2 pages side by side. What Apple has always been good at is recognizing a high technology that may be used by a few, and then say, how do we take that down and popularize it so that ordinary people who are non-technical can use that and get the same level of enjoyment as well as functionality out of it. The setup I've got here happens to be using 2 displays. It's got the 2-page display and the portrait display, both being driven off of the same Macintosh CPU. Now, engineers for a long time have used two displays off of the same computer. What is different here is that we have what we call virtual display, which means that I can control both the workspace and the document space with the same mouse. When the 128K Macintosh came out, my desktop was relatively clean, as I'm sure yours was. There wasn't much you could do with it. There were just a few applications. There was no hard disk. But now desktops are getting pretty cluttered. And I found in my own use that my desktop has lots of things on it. So when I have a workspace, I don't always have a lot of room left over for what I'm trying to create with the computer. Now I do. And this is probably the most dramatic example of that. So, for example, if you were doing publishing or presentations and you wanted to create this document, you could reach over to your workspace and with what we call virtual display, and this is something which you can't do with computers that support two displays, virtual display lets me grab that and actually move it across. I can move that back and forth. So let's just take this and put it into place like that. Now, I want to go over into my spreadsheet, and I can take this spreadsheet model, and let's go up and build a chart. One of the things that's really nice about the Macintosh, let's click on chart here. Okay, there's our chart, is that because I'm using Multifinder and different applications, and the consistency of the applications is the same, the menu bar doesn't have to change as I move from one application to the next. So you really start to appreciate the value of consistency in the system software and the way developers have followed it with their applications when you're doing something like this. Now what I want to do is I want to move this chart out of the spreadsheet application into the publishing application. And so the way I do that is that I'll go up, first of all, let's decide where we want to put that, over here. And let's see, we're going to go back here. I'm going to copy the chart. Now I'm going to paste it over in the publishing application. Okay, now that has been pasted into this application, so I just reach over here with my mouse and I can drag that down and put it into position. And I've started to create more of my document.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Larry Tesler.
Hello, I'm here today to give a bit of a personal perspective that ties together the announcements you've heard today with a little bit of the past, a little bit of the future as seen by myself. As you know, I run the Advanced Technology Group at Apple. That's a research group. And what we do is we take dreams we have today about what computer technology could do for people in the future, and we try to make them real by doing experiments in technology, architecture, applications, and so on. And generally, when we come up with these dreams, which are some of our own and some of other people's that we decide to tackle, the difficulty of them seems very great, and it helps to look back to see what past dreams have resulted in today. Today, as I was watching the demonstrations of the Macintosh CX with the full-page display and with the two full-page display, it reminded me of a dream I had myself 20 years ago this year, 1969, when I was working on a magazine as a volunteer, and we were doing paste up, fiddling around with scissors and paste and pasting up camera-ready copy for a community magazine. And as I was doing it, I thought, this is such a waste of time. This should be done on a computer screen. And about 2 years later, I got myself involved in my first page formatting project at Stanford, and then went on to Xerox PARC, and then came to Apple, and I always kept in my mind this dream that someday people could do much better paste up. Of course, with the introduction of the desktop publishing technology on the Macintosh a few years ago, that's been achieved. But today is a really special day because with the portrait display and with the two full-page display, Those things that I envisioned 20 years ago can now be done just the way I had them in mind a long time ago. And that's a very rewarding thing. But it's also sobering to see how much work had to be done in between to get to where we are today. When I came to Apple, one of the major problems that had to be addressed before we could get to the point we are today was user interface. At that time, personal computers were pretty easy to put together, but actually learning all the different applications, learning how to use the machine was a very difficult thing to do. So I joined the Lisa design team, which had started a few months before I got to Apple in 1980, and we started looking at the problem of how to make that easier. What we came up with was a series of design principles. Now, there were 3 design principles I think that were really key and that have really sustained us. One is intuitiveness. As you know, we try to use some metaphor that the user's familiar with so that as they work on the screen, the things they're familiar with in the problem they're working on and in their work environment are reflected there. And I think everybody's very familiar with the Macintosh metaphors that we use of desktops and folders and using cut and paste, which was my contribution to be sure we could do page layout someday, and various other things that are intuitive, the control panel and so on. But intuitiveness is not enough. Another principle we came up with that really turned out to be key was consistency. The idea, as John pointed out, that as you move from one application to another, what you've learned in one can be applied to another. But it's more than that. With Multi-Finder, as you go back and forth between applications, if you needed to be running into unfamiliar menus and different sets of commands as you went back and forth, that would be particularly difficult. So with Multi-Finder, this rule we made about consistency has become even more important. Another thing that's been extremely important is integration. When you buy a Macintosh, you're not buying hardware designed by one vendor, an operating system designed by another, network designed by another, and so on, and then bolting them all together. The whole thing's been carefully crafted by our engineers so that it all works together in a very seamless way, so that mouse motions are smooth. If you can print on your local printer, you can print across the network, and so on. And yet, we're able to, because of the design of the architecture of the Macintosh, we're able to interface the Macintosh with other computers, for example, to connect our network to other networks. And again, for the user, the experience is unchanged. They get that consistency because of the way we've integrated those other people's network protocols and our protocols together. Now, over the years, it turned out that there were a couple of other principles that we didn't pay enough attention to that turned out to be very important to our customers. And today's announcement, I think, really represents Apple's evolution over the last few years in really accomplishing these 2 other goals. And those are extensibility and configurability. Extensibility means that as we increase the product line, you can take the applications that you had before and either use them as is or get very minor upgrades from the developers and move yourself up the line. There are applications that ran on the 128K Mac on the small screen that run today on the Mac 2CX using the 2 full-page display without any change at all. This is very important to our customers because the investment they make in software, the data files they produce, the learning they do, doesn't have to be discarded as they move up either to more powerful configurations of a machine, adding new displays and video cards and bigger disks, but also as they move to other machines in the product line. The other thing that we found to be important was configurability, which again, the Macintosh 2CX announcements today really display, and I think John went into that very well in terms of how you can attach all these different things to it and set things up the way you like it.
Hi, I'm Alan Lauren. At Apple, our vision of personal computing is centered on the individual. Everything we do is focused on making the individual more creative and more productive. Our new products will continue to fundamentally change the way people approach their work. It's not just what our products do, it's how they will work with people to transform what they want into something powerful. That's what defines the experience of using a Macintosh. Apple started with an idea to empower individuals. And the best way to demonstrate how Macintosh changes the way people work is by actually seeing the way individuals work with the Macintosh. So we'd like to show you some people who use Macintosh to work, create, and express themselves in many new ways.
The Apple Macintosh not only helped get all the day-in-the-life photographers to the right place on the right day, it was the heart of the professional system that turned the latest expedition into a published bestseller.
What's so great about the Macintosh is it never gets between us and our ideas. We can try a lot of different variations in a very short amount of time because the Macintosh is so fast and efficient. We can do the whole book on the Mac. We can do layouts, photocropping, typography, mechanical artwork, and it'll look just like it will when it's published. With the Mac, we can get more work done a lot faster because we have all the tools that we need. We have a complete professional publishing system right at our fingertips.
When I was a child of 9, I collected Buck Rogers comic strips because they were the future. And I could hardly wait every night for the newspaper to arrive. And I'd rush out and smell the newspaper. And it smelled good. You know why? Because the future was in there. But the people in the 4th grade at school made fun of me. And I tore up these strips that I'd been collecting. And a month or so later, I burst into tears and said, "Why am I crying?" I was crying because I'd torn up the future.
I was the co-author of a study that came out last fall that got a lot of attention with the title, "What Do Our 17-Year-Olds Know?" And one of the things that seemed to come out of it was that the things that they know, they're not learning in school. They're learning mainly through television and the popular culture.
There would have been time for such a word tomorrow and tomorrow and... could you read the speech to me, please?
Who would you like to read it?
The Williamson reading.
The Queen, my lord, is dead.
She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word tomorrow. Tomorrow.
I do it more like a newspaper story. Is that okay?
That's fine, Holly. But try to stick to one particular event in the story, like Lady Macbeth's suicide or Duncan's murder.
This is so stupid.
The biggest problem teachers have is motivating students to want to learn. The teacher has that tool to bring the kids to a kind of a fever pitch of wanting to complete a task, wanting to see something accomplished successfully. Then I think that this will become a tremendous resource for the teacher. It won't supplant the teacher.
Well, what did you like about it?
I don't know. I guess I like the last scene with Macbeth and what's-his-name fighting and Macbeth gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't tell what it looked like, you know?
Why don't you show me what you think it looked like? Stage it for us.
She should have died hereafter. There would have been time for such a word. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow.
I need to do a library search.
What is the subject?
I need an illustration of a medieval weapon used in Scotland. Let me see a close-up of this sword. That's outrageous. It's front-page material. This is going to look great. Witnesses said the sword fight lasted just a few moments, with Macduff easily beating the battle-weary Macbeth.
No way. He didn't beat him easily. Holly!
All of a sudden, what's important is to let all the students go at different paces.
and let them even choose their own grades, and that's what will work out better to motivate them.
All right, I'm ready to record. She should have died hereafter. He put up a good fight. Oh, Macbeth. Look, replay the scene, please. And this is the way I'm staging it.
What makes you an authority?
Because I check my facts. I've seen lots of performances, and it was a good fight in every one of them.
Why are they fighting with rapiers? They should have broadswords.
Should have what?
No. This is an engraving from medieval Scotland, in Macbeth's time. You see, this is a broadsword.
So how come they've used rapiers in every Shakespeare play I've seen?
But not in Macbeth. It's set in the Middle Ages. You must check your facts, good fellow.
The student can back up, ask a question about something, collaborate with a friend, and it doesn't run by continuously like television does. The resolution on the screen and what's presented should get more and more like live television with its fine graphics and actors for presentation reasons.
She should have died hereafter. There would have been time for such a word. Tomorrow. And tomorrow. And tomorrow.
The history of Renaissance art, the history of music, the history of other kinds of painting, stage, cinema. They're all ways of looking at the same thing. We're all doing the same thing, same work, but we're doing it in different ways. And saying, my God, isn't this exciting? What we have here to prove that mankind has moved from here to here and can move even further to here.
As Apple's Vice President of Networking and Communications, I direct all of our company's data communications research and development. It's a very exciting assignment because Apple has made major commitments in the area of networking and communications. The company has acquired 2 outstanding firms in that field. We've announced and shipped a number of new products, and there's a great deal more to come. And all of it builds on the idea that got Apple started in the first place, helping people to extend their abilities by creating computers they can use to do extraordinary things. It used to be that mainframes and personal computers lived in 2 separate worlds, the mainframes doing the big jobs and the personal computers helping individuals to be more productive. Each had its place in the scheme of things, and each offered advantages, but neither could tap the strengths of the other, not easily at least. When you bring these 2 worlds together, not only do you increase the capabilities of the individual, but you also make the existing mainframe system more useful to the organization. And when that personal computer is the Macintosh, you provide your people with a tool they will enjoy. The Macintosh has an intuitive interface that people learn quickly so they can get on with their jobs without the need for a lot of training or continuing day-to-day support from the information services people. We'd like to show you how the Macintosh can serve as a terminal for IBM, DEC, and other hosts, and how the Macintosh interface enhances terminal emulation. How you can transfer files to and from the host environment, work with the host application using the familiar features of the Macintosh interface, and finally we'll show you how the Macintosh can be a true software peer in a multi-vendor environment, conversing and working with applications on the host. You'll see how it's done, and you'll see too what practical benefits arise when Macintosh and mainframe get together. The entire information system becomes more valuable because people can do more with it. The source of these benefits is the architecture of the Macintosh. In conventional personal computers, applications sit directly on top of the operating system, which leaves developers on their own to define a human interface. That's why different applications end up looking and behaving differently. But the Macintosh architecture was conceived and designed to provide the support for a human interface that remains consistent across different applications. That consistency is assured by the toolbox, which includes a set of routines that applications can call upon to display interface features, such as windows, menus, and icons. The Macintosh architecture also includes a layer called a desktop. that gives users an easy way to manage disks and files, launch applications, carry text and graphics from one document or application to another, and access network resources and services. The toolbox and the desktop bring consistency and a graphics-based, intuitive interface to the Macintosh, enabling users to learn a variety of applications easily and to integrate them by cutting information from one application and pasting it into another. Now, this consistency is a great advantage for the user of a standalone personal computer, but where it really pays off is in the multi-vendor environments. For just as Macintosh makes it easy to move information between applications, it also makes it easy to move information between environments and allows you to give users one easy, consistent, and intuitive way to make use of all of your information resources. All these features give Macintosh a natural fit with large information systems, where people work with data that's distributed in more than one place and more than one environment, and where people use a variety of applications to analyze and present their findings. Macintosh can emulate the terminals you use now, so that information can flow easily between the mainframe and the desktop, without any need to modify the programming on the host. Once people have the data they need, Macintosh lets them do a lot more with it than they could using a dumb terminal. Now here's a 3179 terminal. We're connected to an IBM 3090 running TSO. And here's how easy it is to use a Macintosh to do the same job. I'll unplug the coax from this terminal and plug the same cable into this Macintosh. On the Macintosh, we have our 3270 emulator. I follow the same procedures to make the connection and to access the host. And I enter the same user ID and the same password. And what we see on the Macintosh is the same information presented in the same form as it was on the terminal. And I can work with it in exactly the same way. We can connect and communicate without any changes in system administration. As far as the mainframe is concerned, the Macintosh looks and acts just like an IBM terminal. But when the Macintosh is acting as a terminal, you'd expect it to do a whole lot more, and it does, because we can take advantage of the Macintosh to do more than just view the data. So, while we're connected, we'll access a report generated by the host database program. I select the data we want to view and copy it into the Macintosh clipboard by selecting Copy from the Edit menu. Now, I can open a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, or any spreadsheet for that matter, running under the Macintosh operating system. I select Paste to put the data into my spreadsheet, and I can manipulate it just as though I've typed it in all by myself. Now, to make the data part of a report, I'll create a graph, paste it into a document, and print it out. What we did in the IBM environment, we can do just as easily in other environments, such as DEC, for example. Let's connect to a VAX. Now let's do it while we're still in session with the IBM system. We can use any of a number of VT-100 terminal emulators. So we'll get the data we need from a VAX database report, and there it is. I'll select it, copy it, and paste it in the spreadsheet. And so, a user can take data from a host and, through terminal emulation, get that information into the Macintosh environment, where it can be treated like information created on the Macintosh. Word processors, spreadsheets, and whatever else I want to use are right at hand, waiting to receive information from any number of hosts. In fact, from this spreadsheet, I can actually open a report that resides on the VAX and import the data directly into the spreadsheet. Digital Equipment Corporation and Apple have been working together to provide even closer Macintosh to VAX integration. So when the Macintosh is connected to a VAX system, it is fully integrated into your network and can make use of all the network's functions: electronic mail, file access, remote terminal services, and inter-process communications. So, as you've seen, you can use Macintosh for terminal emulation in your existing information system, the mainframe computers, the communications hardware, the cables. The value of doing that with a Macintosh instead of a terminal is that you can transfer information to the Macintosh and manipulate it there with all the benefits of the Macintosh interface. File transfer can mean less use of host CPU time and less network traffic. Because host files can be accessed and transferred to and from the Macintosh with point-and-click ease, Macintosh users can work with the data in their own way with local applications and with minimal support. And when they're done, send their work back to the host, making their reports and data accessible to others on the network using the mainframe as a large file server. Many of the people who need to use information aren't experienced at using computers. So the next level of Macintosh to mainframe communications makes host applications look like Macintosh applications to end users. Here, the Macintosh interface provides a front end to mainframe software. Dealing with complicated host applications, either through a terminal or through a conventional personal computer, can be difficult. And that can mean data sessions that are longer and more complex than they really need to be, and inefficient use of your information resources and your people's time. The Macintosh interface can help you get more out of your investment in existing host systems because it can make those systems easier to use. Here, we're using Apple's HyperCard software to work with a mainframe SQL database. HyperCard gives you the programming tools to build front ends for mainframe databases, to use Macintosh interface features such as windows, icons, programmable buttons, and graphics. So the user can connect to the host, request information, and update data with the same intuitive point-and-click interface of a local Macintosh application. It communicates with the host through an SQL-based connectivity language like CL1 that translates the user's inputs into the host's own query language. Absolutely no changes are required to the host applications that also access the database. And when the data is transferred to the Macintosh, CL1 makes the information available in a form that HyperCard can use. The background form that the user sees is part of the local HyperCard application. The data that fills in the blanks comes from the mainframe. There is a growing number of Macintosh applications that can use CL1 to communicate with existing SQL databases. Besides HyperCard, there are databases and spreadsheets available that can work with these host applications without any modification to the host software. A tool called Mac Workstation makes it possible for a programmer to add a Macintosh interface to a host application without having to learn Macintosh programming. The host application can be written in any language, so programmers can use the skills they've already developed and even applications they've already written. Mac Workstation runs on the Macintosh and acts as a bridge and a translator between the host application and the Macintosh toolbox, bringing the Macintosh interface to mainframe data. To use Mac Workstation, the host programmer adds commands to enhance the existing application, so the application can specify what the Macintosh will display to the user. This code tells Mac Workstation to display a dialog box. This identifier can be followed by a character string to add more details, such as text. And other commands invoke other elements of the Macintosh interface. When the application runs, it will send these messages to the Macintosh. The amount of data added to the transaction is very small. It doesn't include all the graphic details, just the specifications. So network traffic is less than it would be if the host had to spell everything out. Mac Workstation is an extension of the Macintosh toolbox that interprets the message and calls other features of the toolbox to draw a dialog box. And what the Macintosh user sees looks like a Macintosh application. Clicking on the button will tell Mac Workstation to return a response to the host. And what the host sees is the command code it expects. Here's a database session as it runs from a VAX terminal. And here's the same application driven with a Mac Workstation front end. To add this kind of enhancement to host applications, programmers don't have to learn Macintosh techniques. Mac Workstation allows them to invoke the Macintosh interface with a minimum of commands to give their clients the power of mainframe applications with an interface that makes those applications easy to use. Differences between data formats, query languages, command languages, and file management conventions need not stand in the way of adding the strengths of the Macintosh to those of the mainframe. Here's another example of Apple's commitment to connectivity in multi-vendor environments. Mac APPC, Apple's implementation of IBM's LU6.2 protocol. It enables host applications and Macintosh applications to work together, even though they are written in different languages. With Mac APPC, Apple became the first vendor to successfully complete the IBM LU6.2 interoperability test. With Mac APPC, applications running on the Macintosh can converse with those running on host systems as true software peers. They can access distributed databases transparently wherever they are located, and combine that data with information maintained on the Macintosh. Cooperative processing takes advantage of the best capabilities of Macintosh personal computers and host systems. The Macintosh personal computer does more than merely connect seamlessly with other devices on a network. IBM, digital, mainframes or minis, terminals or MS-DOS personal computers. The Macintosh adds significant value to enterprise-wide information resources. It can make accurate, timely information readily available to those who need it in a way that's remarkably easy to use. And that, after all, is the bottom line, helping people to be more creative and more productive. The tools we've shown you are designed to help you integrate the Macintosh into your information system. And you don't have to scrap your present hardware to get the benefits of Macintosh technology, to provide a higher level of information services to your whole organization. We consider Macintosh a valuable addition to any information system. It enhances your investments in both hardware and data because, as you've seen, the Macintosh and the system you're now using can work hand in hand, each doing what it does best, and together helping your people to be more effective, more creative, and more valuable.
Oh, to be young, when every day is a new experience, a new lesson in the school of life. And in real-life schools, we ought to know, because we're with your students and teachers every day as partners in education. But you already knew that. What you might not know is that an Apple computer can be as powerful in your office as it is in your classrooms, as it is in offices throughout the business world. In major corporations, managers rely on Macintosh to make their organizations more effective by making the individual more effective, more insightful, and better able to communicate with others. From the design world to the financial markets, with a wealth of software for managing mountains of information, teaching new skills, or balancing budgets. The very same types of things that you do. In perhaps the most important business of all, the business of education. With software especially designed to help you keep track of students, keep track of books, and keep track of funds, to help you design new facilities, present test score trends to the school board, or publish a report to the community. All in a computer environment so intuitive, so simple, it makes even your students feel at home. An environment that connects you to other computers, even mainframes, and makes them more accessible and useful so you can communicate with everyone, from your secretary to your school board president. across the district or across the state, just by pointing and clicking. But the beauty of Macintosh isn't on the desk. It's in the corridors and in the classrooms of your schools. It's on the ball field in the biology lab. Because with Macintosh to help you manage the business of education, you'll have more time for the people of education.
Alfred North Whitehead, the English philosopher and mathematician, once said that civilization advances by extending the number of important operations which we can perform without thinking of them.
I just simply typed plot 3D sine xy and I got this three-dimensional image. That was great. I used to spend years trying to get these kinds of images. That was really exciting.
To be able to generate 43 or 100 or 200 places of Euler's gamma constant or any other thing you wanted, it's absolutely extraordinary.
Mathematica frees people from the tyranny of manual calculation, and that's important because it allows science to be more inspirational.
Within months of its release, Mathematica began to transform the world of mathematical research and instruction. In the next few minutes, you'll hear from some of the people who pioneered the use of Mathematica on the Macintosh and meet its creator, Stephen Wolfram.
When I started off doing mathematics, I wasn't very good at it. I never learnt my multiplication tables, and it was certainly the conclusion of my teachers at that time that there was no way I would ever go on and do anything of any kind of quantitative nature or anything sort of mathematically oriented. As it turned out, I found out about computers and found out that you could make computers do these kinds of things. We kind of identified several different sorts of mathematics that people like to do. Numerical mathematics, symbolic mathematics, and graphics. The user interface for Mathematica on the Macintosh is a particularly sophisticated one. One of its most important features is the ability to produce what we call Mathematica notebooks, ways of mixing text and graphics together with live Mathematica input. The goal of a software designer should be to build a system where people just say, I turn to my Macintosh, I do a calculation, I don't really notice that this is done with Mathematica and that it has a particular syntax, a particular semantics, and so on. The thing that's great about Mathematica on the Macintosh is the way that the user interface is built for that particular system. The Macintosh has a very rich user interface environment. What we've done is to build a very kind of graphically oriented user interface that allows people to do things like build up interactive textbooks that make use of nice fonts and nice kinds of graphical ideas on the Macintosh. And that's something that the kind of Macintosh environment and Macintosh culture has uniquely allowed us to do. So what one really wants to do is to build a system that's so natural to use that nobody notices it's really there.
Today, professors at universities across the country are using Mathematica and Macintosh to educate a new generation of scientists and mathematicians.
I suspect it's the case that most kids think that mathematics is probably the worst subject to deal with. You know, they hate the math lessons. We want to change that. I think one of the things that I'd like to see happen as a result of Mathematica is that a lot of high school and elementary school kids for whom mathematics is right now their least favorite subject, that it becomes one of their most exciting subjects.
One day last winter sometime, we saw Mathematica run. And I think it occurred to both of us independently, you know, Mathematica can teach calculus to students who couldn't get it the standard way. Now here we have a textbook where all the examples are actually infinitely many examples. Every example can be rekeyed, re-executed, and so what we have is a book that may look like it has one page when it in fact has 100 pages sitting on one page.
In the Macintosh, one can actually feel comfortable editing back and forth, and it is like a dialogue. It is like the student is carrying on a conversation, a very friendly conversation with the author, the initial author of the notebook. We believe that the Macintosh is the correct choice for using Mathematica as a teaching tool, because the student is not bogged down with programming difficulties or editing difficulties.
I believe Mathematica can open up a beautiful world of scientific inquiry. And I predict that math departments are going to see a resurgence in the good quality student who wants to study mathematics, because so many doors have opened by Mathematica.
It was propositioned that if you knew the slope of a plane that you intersect with the cone, that there's clearly some relationship between that and the eccentricity of the conic section that results. And the question was just how simple is that function? So I was poking around one day with Mathematica, and it would have probably taken several hours worth of algebra to actually find this this relationship, because the algebra is messy. But with Mathematica one time, I just sat down and typed in the relevant equations and had an answer in about 10 minutes. And so with the use of Mathematica, you're allowed, in some sense, to wander into zones of thought where you might not be inclined to go otherwise.
I teach a calculus course to MBA students. Some of them are French majors and history majors. It's very important for me to give them graphical representations of the underlying mathematical concepts.
Unfortunately, something like that is almost impossible to draw.
That's just what Mathematica is great at. Calculus is about maximizing things. So if you can describe your profit function as a function of two variables, you might be very interested in how to maximize a function of two variables. That means, in Boy Scout lingo, that means finding the highest point in the mountains.
In the past, computer-assisted algebra, mathematical processing languages were only available on sophisticated computers, and this made it impossible to put this into the mainstream of university or high school education in America. But now, because it's available on Macintosh, a common computer means that we can expect common students to do uncommon things.
Mathematica on the Macintosh gives researchers new techniques to gain insight into their work across a broad range of disciplines.
There are researchers at universities, government labs, industrial research labs, and so on. One thing that I've been surprised by, pleasantly I think, is that those researchers don't just come from mathematics and applied mathematics and physics, they come from all different areas.
One of the exciting things that I've done with Mathematica was to analyze a case of contested science coming out of Paris. There was an absolutely extraordinary claim made by a scientist that high dilutions would still have very active biological effects. And I was one of a team of people that went over to France to look at this, and I reanalyzed the data later with Mathematica. And in connection with that, this shows what would have been observed if the only effect operative had been statistical noise. That's the theoretical line, that's the dashed line, and the solid line is what actually we observed. And you notice there's just 3 bins here. And one of the things I did was to compare the graphs using different bin sizes. Very easy to do, and here what you see is more and more bins being added. Initially the fit gets better, and then as you go on, there's more noise added into the picture, and the noise comes to dominate the entire thing. The very useful thing you can do here is look at the effect in real time of varying the bin size, and it's very exciting to be able to interact with the data in such a quick fashion, go back and forth and see. It gives you a much better feel for the data than you'd otherwise have. One of the reasons I think Mathematica and Macintosh fit together so well is Mathematica is structured in such a way as to allow you to think very simply about the work you're doing, and the Macintosh is structured in such a way that you can interact with the computer in a very easy way.
I think the Mathematica notebooks will be the first in an ever-changing series of electronic journals. In this notebook, what I've done is I've pasted in a couple of pictures of comets, that I've digitized these images, and then I simply pasted them into the Mathematica notebook. What I see happening, and if I go further with this, is to actually show this at scientific meeting, rather than waving my hands and trying to draw lines on the blackboard or trying to hope that through my gesticulations people will understand that I'm talking about comet tails and flowing plasma and everything. They actually see it there in the notebook, and they can test it. They can do their own experiments where they can put different terms in the equations. And I think that allows scientists to review your work much better than simply being in a meeting and receiving whatever you want to tell them. I think this is very important for science, and this will significantly advance science.
I think science will always have the same amount of perspiration and inspiration as before, but we will eliminate calculus and differential equations and graphics from the perspiration category, and that'll give us more time for having more sophisticated inspirations. The quality of intuitions that one can gain in working on a problem in my field or many other fields of science that I'm familiar with often is influenced by the quality of the visual imagination one has. And when that imagination can be boosted and aided and speeded by a graphics presentation system for mathematics like Mathematica, it's bound to improve certain classes of intuitions. I have to admit that I've always had enough government money that I always had programmers working for me, and so I never learned to use the computer myself. And so it was only the students and the professional programmers who did it. And then I tried to learn using the IBM PC, and I have to admit I hated it because it was so fussy and I couldn't remember whether the asterisk came before or after the colon, and I didn't use the thing for many hours a day. And then when the Mac came, I decided this is the machine for me. And so I have now learned to use it, and I depend on the machine heavily.
One of the reasons I think scientists have switched in large numbers recently to using a Macintosh is simply because it's not only easy, but it has very sophisticated software for doing data analysis and especially graphics. And it's very useful to be able to understand data that way graphically. One of the nice things about Mathematica is that it interacts quite successfully with existing software, so that you can send out a text file and pick it up in Mathematica, open it up, and do the special sorts of processing at which Mathematica is uniquely good. It doesn't sacrifice other sorts of software. It fits in nicely with them. And I think that's partly a good feature of the Macintosh and partly a good feature of the way all of these programs have been designed to work together.
What we were trying to do with Mathematica can be thought of as trying to do for mathematics what the aeroplane did for transportation.
I suppose it's a little bit like being accustomed to going on long hikes and admiring the terrain and the scene, and then riding a bicycle, and then riding a motorcycle, and then riding a convertible.
When I was 15 years old, General Motors dropped a big V8 into the Chevy. That was one of the happiest days of my life. I couldn't wait to drive one of those Chevys, and I had exactly the same feeling when somebody dropped Mathematica into a Macintosh SE.
Perhaps Mathematica then is a combination of calculus and a Porsche 911. It's math in the fast lane.